Hello, everyone.
You're such a on brand.
We are live. We are live to talk about, hang on, demons. And all the tabs and all the things. Let's see. Christy's here.
Hi, Christy.
Christy. Yay. I know we have some people here, so feel free to say hey if you're here.
Lurking in the shadows.
We are hoping that Uno will be here a little bit later. He had a change of plans and he's hoping to hop on at some point during this live stream, but he may not. So you're stuck with the 3 food groups, tetrazzini, carbonara, and stroganoff. Because that's the day that we're having. It's great. Oh, goodness.
Yeah,
all right, so.
I'm not prepared like you. You have notes. I
have no notes. I don't even have the book in front of me.
I do have notes, but I did not. I was going to go through because I used some of the notes for my video because I did a review video and I wanted to talk about the parts that were like super meaningful for me personally. And so I was like, all right, I want to highlight this other stuff that we can talk about. And I didn't. So I haven't re-reviewed them, but
That's more than I did. I don't even have the book in front of me. I'm just going to wing it. Hi, Penny.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. So, I'm assuming everyone who's hopping by has finished the book or doesn't care about spoilers, because this will probably be a fairly spoiler-filled discussion. But I guess we can just go ahead and start with like kind of what we thought about the book overall, like star rating and like how we feel about it in general.
I don't remember what I gave it.
Hi, Dia.
Hi, Dia.
Yeah, I'll start if that's okay.
Yeah,
I don't really give star ratings anymore.
Well, that's fine. I just general thoughts.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is my favorite Dostoevsky, but it's one of those that I've been thinking about it ever since I finished it last week. And the more I think about it, the more I like it. But I think it's a little bit lower just because it took longer to kick off than other books that I've read by him. But I do feel like the payoff was worth it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Sharon?
For me, the ending gave it 4 stars. I was sitting around the 3 stars mid-rating until I got to the last, like, part 3 of the book, the last part. And then it just was like, oh, now things are starting to actually make sense.
Yes.
I think still at the bottom of my Dostoevsky books that I've read so far, just because it was so chaotic and my brain couldn't process most of what was going on until we got to the end.
Mm-hmm.
But I think on reread, it would probably sit better.
Yeah, for sure.
I was thinking that too, that like once I finished it, I was like, I see why Una went ahead and like started rereading it, because then you can see all the clues and stuff. And I don't think he reread all of it. I think he reread parts 1 and 2, because those are the parts where you're the most confused and you get the most revelations in part 3. So I actually rated it 5 stars. I loved it. It's one of my favorite Dostoevsky reading experiences that I've ever had, though I don't know if it's my favorite one of his books. It's still higher up there than some of them that I've read. Like so far right now, The Idiot is at the bottom for me. But I didn't read that in a group and I want to reread it and talk to people about it because I had no one to talk to about it. So I think I would get more out of it talking to other people about it. But this is still pretty high ranking for me. I really loved it. And I was too confused for most of it. But I think that that's really kind of the point, is just you get this feeling of chaos and unease throughout the whole book, of like not knowing what is going on and not knowing who you can trust. And so it takes until part 3 for a lot of that to start to come together. So
It kind of reminded me, there's a book by Olga Tokarczuk who's amazing, and she's got the books of Jacob, and it's separated into like 8 books. The first book is called The Book of Fog, and while you're in that book, it really feels like you're in a fog because you have no idea what's going on. And I thought about that several times in the first part of this book because it's just, I don't know. And you can't see what's coming.
Yeah.
So,
but you know it is because the narrator keeps going,
yes.
but I didn't know what was going to happen. And you're like, what?
Yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say, I think this year has been a weird reading year for me as far as my mindset. And so I think if I had a different mindset and less going on in my life where I could focus on it more, I would have also had a different reading experience.
Yeah.
And it's definitely different reading it with a group versus by yourself, because I don't think I would have gotten as much out of it by myself.
I probably would have DNF'd it if I was reading it by myself, because I don't do well with books that I struggle to know like what's going on or who's, I lost track of the narrator so many times.
Me too.
Usually I mean, if I didn't have you all reading along with me, I would have DNF'd it probably in part 1.
Yeah, definitely. Like I think too, I know Kate took some breaks too, but Stephanie and I took some major breaks where we read for the kickoff reading sprints and then we didn't read again until the next kickoff reading sprint. Mm-hmm. And because I was trying to finish so many books, and I think that I wouldn't have had that disjointed feeling if I had actually not taken breaks. Yeah. It made me feel probably even more lost than I needed to. Yeah. But I still don't know, like if someone were to ask me like, what's this book about? I'm like, I can't fully tell you because like that's really spoilery because you don't know what it's really about and where it's really going until part 3.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like part 3 I read I think most of that in like 2 days, so at the same time I rushed that just because I couldn't put it down. So if I had been smart, I would have gone back and at least skimmed it to kind of get the most out of it, but it was just so gripping that I was I have to find out what happens. I don't care.
And I think for me, this is part of the reason why I think that this is one of my favorite Dostoevsky reading experiences is because this book gripped me a lot more than some of his others. I didn't feel like, I think of like Brothers Karamazov, which is wonderful and I love it, but there's such big chunks of philosophy. And then you've got that big long chapter that's like a fever dream and different things where it's like, this is like, it was work for me to get through some of that stuff. And I didn't feel that way about Demons because I felt like the philosophical elements were in more bite-sized chunks distributed throughout, which made it easier for me overall. I feel like it was a really gripping
to me, bits of part 1 and 2 felt like a fever dream just because I had no idea what was happening, who it was happening to, or why it was happening. And so it felt like, what the heck is going on here? What am I even supposed to be paying attention to?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'm a reader that I generally, trust the author to bring us where we need to go. And I don't question things, but I need a little bit of hand-holding just to be able to follow the story. Yes. And we didn't get that at all. I mean, Dostoevsky, his books tend to be a little bit chaotic at times. But there's also usually a strong through line throughout the whole book. And it felt like we didn't get that through line until part 3. And I'm like, why? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Another thing that sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it was harder for me to keep some of the characters straight because I didn't connect with it like you said, because there wasn't like a a consistent like line through some of it.
Right.
So it was like, okay, who is who? Who's related to who? And I didn't care as much as I normally would until later in the book.
Yeah. I think once you get to the end, you kind of you see the threads once you get to the end. You know, that like, okay, this was running the whole way through, but because you don't know what to look for, it's harder to see that. I also think, I think the only other major Dostoevsky work that I have not yet read is Notes from a Dead House. And so I know with the other Dostoevsky books that I've read, none of them have a first-person narrator. They're all third-person omniscient. And I don't know about Notes from a Dead House. I know you guys have both read that one. But I'm just wondering why the choice for a first-person narrator who is honestly a lot of the time kind of more vaguely involved than directly involved in a lot of the scenes. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I mean, for me, I think it kind of reflected how I felt. Like I didn't know what all was going on. And I think, yes, you're not sure who to trust or believe. So I think having a narrator that doesn't know everything, you're still kind of like, can I trust him? Is that accurate? Kind of thing. So for me, it kind of, even though I kept forgetting who the narrator was, and you don't find out until later,
Right.
It kind of fit with the theme of the book.
Yeah.
Or how I felt throughout the book.
And I do agree with Courtney that I do think that the chaos was intentional.
Oh yeah.
Like
yeah.
For sure. And you felt it.
Dostoevsky's not an author that does things on accident.
For sure.
Everything is very much planned out when he writes.
I don't know if I feel like he was that unreliable because his takes ended up being correct. At the time, I was like, can I trust you when you say, oh, Pyotr's a snake? And I was kind of feeling like he was a snake too, but I was like, but is this just because the narrator's saying that or because he really is? And he really was. So he was, I don't know if I would say he was totally unreliable. I think he was biased towards Stepan, but I don't know.
But at the beginning, you don't know.
Yeah, you have no idea.
And you're so used to narrators being unreliable, or at least that's how I kind of
I don't know. To me, it maybe because I'm a little jaded on it, but to me, he felt different than, at least than your typical unreliable narrator, where you know the narrator is unreliable. To me, I didn't so much question the narrator, but the events that were happening in the book.
Okay, yeah.
I trusted the narrator was telling us what he knew at the time or what he thought he knew.
Right.
Yeah.
I never questioned, like, is he leading us astray on purpose or does he not know what's happening? I thought, okay, we're getting things as he's essentially learning them. And to me, that's different than having an unreliable narrator where you're questioning what they're telling you all the time.
That's true. Yeah. Then today's characterization of an unreliable narrator. Unreliable because he doesn't have all the information as opposed to purposefully. Yeah.
But that's human nature too.
Yeah, absolutely.
No one is going to know everything that's happening from all sides at one time.
And you are viewing things through your own lens. You can't help that,
Right.
Yes.
I agree with this, Matt. I think that was really, really interesting. And not knowing, like, because you don't know, like you say he went away because he went crazy or whatever. And until you reach the censored chapter, you don't actually know why he left. Which the censored chapter is a whole nother conversation.
I was not expecting that.
No, me either. Even with all of Una's like grinning on the last live show. And I see why Una was like, okay, this conversation we're having now about, the art, like divorcing the art from the artist if the artist is objectionable in some way, like how that then ties in to Stavrogan of like how do you feel about him now? But now, how do you feel about him now that you know what he actually did? Although I actually didn't like him the whole book, to be fair.
I didn't either, to be honest. I mean, I didn't hate him at the beginning, but I just didn't have a fondness for him.
Right.
Like other books I've read, you develop a fondness for the characters. And in this one, I think it was interesting too, because there wasn't really anyone, or there were very few that were just good. But that's, again, like human nature. I liked it.
Yeah, now I'm trying to think. I mean, I think that the character that I ended up probably liking the most was Stepan, because he just seemed so bumbling in the beginning anyway, that I was just kind of like, he's dumb, but he's kind of like a lovable dumb. That's kind of how I felt about him. So, and his ending I really liked. But this is okay. You saying this, Matt, for him to take a more heroic stand. Apparently, I've done a little bit of research. My intention was to read Joseph Frank's chapter on this in his book, and I only got a few pages in. I didn't finish it. But I have done some research on like the censored chapter and stuff like that. And his intention, because that chapter ended up being cut out entirely, his intention was to make Stavrogan the hero. But because he wasn't allowed to include this backstory, he actually changed the ending a little bit, which I think is interesting. Like, he couldn't do what he originally wanted to do because he couldn't include that chapter. So I don't think you're alone in that, Courtney. I think I probably annoyed a lot of people.
Yeah, this is definitely one with a lot of unlikable characters.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
But that kind of made it more fun, like a different reading experience.
Yeah.
You didn't have just the angelically good person and then all the other characters. There was a wide range.
And even most of the people who were bad, including Stavrogan, had like these moments of like seeming like they could go either way. Like even that censored chapter and his struggle with Pyotr, like Matt saying, and you feel like he's like struggling between like, should I do the right thing? Do I really care? I probably don't care. Wait, no, I actually do feel really bad about this. And like kind of going back and forth, and which is why Tikhon calls him lukewarm, is because he keeps going back and forth and he's not settling on one thing. But you get the sense like he could like try to pull this together and come out a different person, a changed person. Which like I still am grappling with the very end of this book. Why did he kill himself? Did he kill himself? Because like Tikhon warned him, he's like, you will get to the point where you will do anything to prevent this confession from being published. And it will be worse than anything you've done yet. And I'm like, okay, did he see this suicide coming? And he's referring to the suicide, meaning like you can't come back and change after that. It's too late at this point. Or did he do it because he wanted to be the martyr, he wanted to be the victim, and everyone to feel sorry about how bad he felt? Or was there another reason? So like I'm curious what everyone's thoughts are on that, because I don't know where I've landed on what his motivation was for killing himself.
Didn't it say in the Tikhon chapter, which again, it's been a minute since I read it, but he was afraid of people laughing at him? Like he was more focused on that than actually repenting, or like what people would think about him?
Yeah, he wanted to publish his confession because he wanted self-immolation, like this martyrdom complex of people to be like, oh, look at what he's been through and he feels so bad and so regretful. Oh, this poor man, he's been suffering with this all these years. He wanted to play the victim, which is gross, because who was really the victim? The little girl was really the victim, not him. You know, so that's just that much more gross. And Tikhon's like, this is what you want, but what you're going to get is people laughing at you because they're like, why does this bother you? She doesn't matter anyway. She's just a little peasant girl, you know?
Yeah. So I think because of that, I'm leaning more toward he just wanted to be like the martyr, which I could be wrong, or it could only be part of it, but I don't know. He didn't have remorse like I normally think of when people have remorse.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, that's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like knowing Dostoevsky, it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
He wanted to be the martyr. He had the self-destructive run, but I feel like every time I read Dostoevsky, by the time I finish the book, I always feel like there's something that Dostoevsky is holding back from us, the readers, that he hasn't told us. And I feel like this is one of those areas where it's a little bit of what we've seen in the book, but there's also something that Dostoevsky hasn't told us on the page.
Yeah, he doesn't hand it to you.
Right.
You know, which I love that about it, because I think I was trying to figure out like why did he do this? And I like, there are so many different opinions, because there's both of the things that you mentioned, and then I saw someone who said like, well, you know, he was trying to fulfill himself in like whatever way that he could, and he was like, well, this is the last thing I haven't done, so I was like, that's interesting. So like I found like 3 or 4 different takes as to why people thought that he did it, and everyone had very sound reasoning for each of these arguments.
But also when you're, I mean, he wasn't a good person at all. But when you get so desperate that suicide is an actual real thought in your brain and not just an entertainment kind of, you're not just entertaining the thought, but you're seriously thinking it and planning it out, your brain is totally different.
Yeah.
You're thinking in totally, I mean, I know this from self-experience. You are a totally different person than you would be if you're just like, oh, I hate my life, or I wish people would feel sorry for me. So that's why I feel like there's something going on in his brain at that moment that we don't get, because he does go through with it. If he was just thinking about it and he didn't actually pull the proverbial trigger, then we might have gotten more from his brain going forward. But since he actually did go through with it, I feel like there's something that's in his brain that goes in your brain when you are going through with a suicide attempt that only a person that's been through that experience can relate to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That
And
makes
I think
sense.
his last letter, you know, to Dasha is very like kind of indicative of the state of his mind, because he goes back and forth. It's a very tumultuous, chaotic letter where it seems like he doesn't know what he wants, but he does like this wasn't like a whim for him to kill himself either, which is evidenced by the fact that he actually like he had soap and he made sure he put it all over the rope so that way it wouldn't like he wouldn't be able to get out of it once he did it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is I agree with this, Matt. I feel like he wanted to try to make himself look like I don't know, like someone who just didn't care. Like he wanted to portray himself as like this sociopath. That's like, I'm just doing it because I can. But yeah, then he couldn't get away with at least some of the regret that he experienced for it.
Yeah. Or kind of like, what does it matter? That was kind of a theme running through the book too.
Yeah.
What's the point?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yes, I totally agree with this, Sharon. I read a paper that someone wrote, and they actually compared Pyotr to Dionysus because they said that he was a psychopath acting as a revolutionary, but he was actually, he behaved inhumanly. And that's the only reason why he survived the book. Most people in this book died, and he didn't. He escapes a human fate because he was practically inhuman. And I was like,
I like
that's a
that.
really interesting way of looking at it. Because we were just talking, you know, like no one in this book seems to be like staunchly good, but most of the people don't seem to be like all the way evil either. There's at least a struggle there, except for Pyotr.
Yeah.
He just seems like he is all the way through, like just bad. So I feel like Una tried to mislead me on the last live because he's like, "Why don't you trust him?" I was like, "Because I think he's a snake," and I was right. And he was like, "You think that, huh?" I'm like, "You trying to mislead me?"
With his Cheshire cat grin, like,
Oh,
yes,
man.
I know.
He knows all. Oh my goodness. I do feel like Stavrogan is the character that I can't stop thinking about the most because I feel like he is a very complex character and there's so much to him. And I'm so glad that I read that censored chapter because it explains so much of his internal struggle that you don't see elsewhere. He just seems cold and aloof, but it's really because he can't bring himself to tell anyone about what he's done. So
yeah, that chapter I think changed everything.
Yes. Yeah, that was a very pivotal chapter. And I'm like, oh, I mean, I can see why at the time this was published that they're like, this is obscene. We're not publishing this.
Yes.
I'm like, that would have been controversial in that time period. Yeah.
Especially in Russia.
Yeah. And then I remember I started reading it and it's like, whoa, did it really just go there? And it's like, yeah, it did. And then it just kept going. And it's just, yeah, definitely controversial.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. I like didn't even know what to do with myself after that chapter. I sat down and wrote like pages of notes afterwards, like just trying to work out in my brain, like what just happened? Because I have to like process either by writing it down or by talking about it. And then I had like so many conversations with my husband who has not read the book and probably won't. And I was like, so this happened and this theme is going on and there's this conversation. We'd go on walks and I just talk the whole time about demons. My poor husband. Yes. Yeah. So I would say that, you know, most of the deaths that happen in this book, he is responsible for in some way, even if he did not directly perpetrate it.
Yes.
You know, because if he had also just walked away from Pyotr way sooner, not given him wishy-washy answers, not only would his wife not have been killed, but they probably wouldn't have gone through with everything that they did to Shatov, which was the death that I'm like, that one killed me. Because he's like so happy his wife's here and had a baby, and he doesn't care whose baby it is. He doesn't care that it's Stavrogan's baby. I'm like, that was a bombshell. It's like, what? Wait, what?
Which is so funny because it's in other books. But this one I was still like, oh, he did that? What? Like crazy.
And I put in the Discord, I can't remember who replied to me. So if you're here, I'm sorry. Someone replied to me on the Discord and was like, it actually said, like, after Shatov slapped him, Stavrogan was like, was that because of your wife? And he was like, no. And I was like, oh, I didn't even remember that. I was so shocked by the slap heard around the world.
Yes.
I like that thought. Couldn't kill his conscience. Couldn't live with the demon anymore. Oh, so have you not read the censored chapter at all, Courtney?
It's free on Project Gutenberg if you don't have it.
Yep.
It's crazy.
You need to read it. It may change how you view the whole book. In a good way, I think, though. Probably. It did for me.
It's hard to read, but it does change the whole book in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
okay. So, and Sharon said it was you. I thought it might have been, but I was not sure. Yeah. And I did not catch that because it was, okay. Oh, you're Russian. Never mind. I missed that entirely. You're one that was actually in Russian. Okay. So you did have it. Yeah, see, like
I completely missed that until the very end when she came to town. I'm like, wait,
he's married?
Married?
And then it's like, and she's pregnant?
I think
it's
because it was essentially the narrator mentioning it every time, and it wasn't actually like, or at least from what I remember, wasn't Shatov talking about his wife. It was like in the narration of the story, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't like, oh, hey, I just talked to my wife the other day.
Yes.
Well, I guess they had been estranged for several years.
Right.
You find that out when she comes. So
and that's why, like, when she came and she was like, hey, I'm pregnant, that was like, to me, that was like the red herring of it all. Like, okay, it's definitely not his because, like, he hasn't seen her for how long, so.
Yeah, and he, like, was just, like, so happy that she was there that he's like, I don't care whose baby it is. I'm going to raise it like it's mine.
Right.
I'm like, oh. And then he goes to Kirillov, and Kirillov's like, yeah, buddy, here's all this stuff, even though they haven't really talked. Like, all of a sudden, I was like, I think I actually, like, put, like a tab in that part, and I was like, okay, this is, like, adorable, this little, like, buddy situation that's happening here. Like, I got you. I got your tea. I got your food. I'll pay for all of it. I don't care. And I was like, oh. And then the whole time you're knowing, like, he's going to die soon. He's going to die soon. This makes it sad.
Yeah, it's like in the movies when a character is too happy, things are going too well for the characters, you know something's about to happen.
Yep. Okay. Yeah.
See, I miss these little details the first read.
I missed that too. Because I know there was a whole section where they kind of like introduced like all these people around Stepan and Varvara. And there was a lot of people. And Shatov was one, Kirillov was one, Lebyadkin was another. Like there was a whole bunch of, And because she didn't come back around for a while, it never stuck with me, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
They did Shatov dirty, though. They did. Urkel did him dirty. We were all talking about in our Voxer chat, like how we all thought of Steve Urkel. So if anyone else did
I do that? Yeah.
We'd love to hear it. That actually suits him well, doesn't it?
It does.
He was almost as conniving as Pyotr.
Yeah, there were a few, like, also it cracks me up that there was an emoji reference before there was the term emoji. He wanted to put a smiley, what was it, a face with his tongue sticking out or something on the paper, and it was so random.
Yeah. Some of it was just, oh man, even parts of part 3 where it was intense, parts of it were so funny. Like the fate, and then they have the party, and like they have, I forget what one of them was called. It was like he was dressed up and he was supposed to represent like Russian truth or something in different newspapers. And this was like the literary quadrille they had planned. It's like,
and the guy that brought his rug on the train.
Yeah. So in the midst of all these horrors, there were moments that were just like hilarious. Although I feel like there's some of it that I want to research more too, because like when everything blew up at the fate, I was like, I feel like I wish, this is why I wish Uno was here. I feel like he's probably done research, because I'm like, I don't know why, like what happened with Stepan coming up, like why that was so controversial and ruined the entire fate and everyone got so upset. I was just like, I mean, he doesn't seem like he's got it all together and everything, but I mean, it doesn't feel like this would ruin everything. So I don't really understand the context for that. I don't know if anyone who's tuning in knows anything about that, but that was an element that I was just kind of like, obviously this is a turning point here, but I don't understand contextually why.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, this is when I'm going to be questioning stuff, I think, until I reread it.
yeah, I loved it. I can't stop thinking about it. Like, it was so good.
Led to lots of great food conversations as well.
Yes.
You know,
And renewed appreciation for stroganoff and pineapple and lasagna
and Velveeta.
and Velveeta. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
But I think that was like the breath we needed with all the craziness. It was a
Yeah.
little bit of laughter.
a little bit of levity because the body count was high in this.
Was this
Like,
the one with the highest body count, I think?
it might be. I don't know if anyone else has done research on that, but it feels like, I mean, The Idiot was pretty bad. The ending of The Idiot. But I feel like this was more people.
Yeah.
Like,
And it's been forever since I read The Idiot and The Brothers K. But I think this was one of the darkest ones that I can, in my memory, out of all of what I've read by him.
yeah, because it feels like everyone except like Piotr and Varvara died. Because I forgot to mention when I was saying like Stavrogin's inaction, caused his wife and Lebyadkin to be killed and Shatov, but also Lizaveta.
Yeah.
Like, and she knew the choice that she was making, and she says that, but it's like then she goes out and they see her in the crowd and they just like beat her to death. I was just like, what just happened? She did nothing. She had nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got dark.
Yeah. And apparently there's like a Lizaveta in most Dostoevsky books. And she usually dies.
I didn't even catch that till you said it. And then it's like, who did he know? Or who did he base that on? Like, bitter.
Well, yeah, and because like the pawnbroker's sister in Crime and Punishment, immediately I was like, that was Lizaveta.
Yeah.
And then I was like, is there more? And then I was like, Brothers Karamazov, like the stinking Liza. And then I was like, I wonder if there's one in The Idiot. I don't remember. And the mother of the three daughters' names is Lizaveta in that one. I don't think she dies, but but like there's
life.
Yeah, I was like, all right, I haven't read Notes from a Dead House. I'm wondering if there's a Lizaveta in that one, but I'm going to be watching for her to die, apparently. So
we don't hear about too many females in Notes from the Dead House because it's
okay,
all about essentially his fictionalized version of his experience in prison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So most of the characters that you meet in that book are male.
Okay.
Maybe there's a male Lizaveta. We'll have to check.
What would the male version of that be?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just keep thinking lizard. I'm like, that's not a name.
That could be his nickname.
Better than lasagna, I guess.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah, she could have, but I feel like she was not in her right mind because of everything that just happened because of Stavrogen.
Yes.
So she was not all there at that point. She'd been put through the ringer.
A lot of people in this book, they weren't in their right mind.
Yeah, and some of them it's because of Stavrogen. Because for her, I feel like it really was, and that's part of the reason why I didn't like Stavrogen when we talked at our halfway live. I was just like, this boy is a playa. Like, how many girls is he stringing along? And Dasha's the only one who knows about the other ones. There was at least like 3 girls. No, 4, because Shatov's wife. There's at least 4 girls. Yes. I mean, it wasn't the best decision.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Hi, Noah. We're talking about demons. Did you ever read it? Una was trying to talk him into reading it after Flannery O. January. I don't know if he did.
Oh, if he did, he would have some good insights.
Oh, he sure would. I think you would love it, Noah. Lots of great discussions to be had. So, yeah. I don't know. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about?
Would this be one, just because of the subject matter, would this be one that you would recommend to people or only like specific people?
Only if people have read other Dostoevsky.
Yeah.
I would not recommend this as a starting spot.
Yeah.
I don't think I would necessarily recommend it as a starting spot either, but I would recommend it overall. So, but I think that like it's not, we've already kind of discussed, it's not really very typical for a Dostoevsky in the way that it's laid out, in the way that it's a first person narrator, in the way that you don't know what's going on for most of the book. In a lot of ways, it is very far from the typical Dostoevsky. So,
yeah, and I think part of the way he hooks you in with some of his stuff is the soap opera stuff that's like Russian.
Right.
Yeah.
And then this one, it doesn't start with that really. And so it's very jarring when you're used to his other stuff.
Part one does have some, because that is the slap heard around the world.
It does, but it's not. Yeah, it's not like at the beginning, like keep reading.
Yeah, as opposed to like The Idiot and Crime and Punishment both immediately blast you in the face.
Yeah.
Join us, Noah.
But it's definitely one that I think is going to stick with me the most. Because I keep randomly thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't, yeah. I think that like Brothers Karamazov is the one that it's been the longest since I've read it, because I have reread Crime and Punishment since the first time I read that one. So I feel like I need to go back and read Brothers K before I can truly rank what I've read. But,
yeah, I think I still like Crime and Punishment a hair above this one. I think just because I didn't feel like I was in a fog through some of it. But
well, you know immediately what happened. There's no guessing. You're just stuck in his brain as he's processing.
Yeah.
You know?
It's definitely different. But I think this is one where I'll appreciate it for sure on a reread. Yeah. And it's been so long since I've read Brothers K, I don't remember the majority of it.
Yeah, I don't remember a lot of the details. And it was both when I first read Crime and Punishment and Brothers K, I was not yet introduced to BookTube at all. So I didn't have the benefit of discussions with other people. And I know that that makes a huge difference. But Crime and Punishment has long been my favorite Dostoevsky. And maybe that's because that's what I started with. But I just love it so much. I love how
Crime and Punishment is like the most kind of straightforward Dostoevsky.
Yeah, it is. I think it's a good starting point. Someone was asking me that the other day. But I've also heard from you guys and a couple other people that Notes from a Dead House is a great starting point as well. Because he gets a lot of inspiration for a lot of his stories from his time in Siberia.
I mean, he basically took notes while he was in prison, and then when he got out of prison, fictionalized them from, his journal essentially, and wrote a novel of it.
Right.
Yeah. And it's not as long, so it's not as intimidating as some of his other ones.
Yeah, that's true.
If you're intimidated by the size of it.
Brothers K is pretty big. And so is Demons. I would say those are probably the two biggest ones. I think it's funny, Matt, that you're like kind of waiting, because Brothers Karamazov is definitely like the one that people usually call his masterpiece. So I don't blame you for kind of saving that for last, because it's hard not to compare, books from the same author. I have heard from some people that this was a book, maybe it was Una who said it, I don't know, that he originally had kind of the plots of Demons and Brothers Karamazov intertwined, and then decided to make them into 2 separate books. Brothers Karamazov more addressing the religious side, and Demons more addressing like the political intrigue and assassinations and all that kind of stuff. So that would be interesting to kind of read those like back to back and see any kind of overlap in theme or thoughts or, that kind of stuff.
That does make sense though, because there were a lot of conversations in this book about atheism and nihilism.
Mm-hmm.
So it does make sense that they were at once, together, and then he separated it.
Yeah. Because that was the demons, right? But like when you get to the end of the book, the demons were the isms, nihilism, atheism, all those things that were the things that were plaguing Russia. All right. I'm a little behind, you guys. Sorry. I'm not as bad as last time. I gave up last time. Oh, Dostoevsky binge. Your head will be full, Noah.
Oh, yeah. That was a very good.
That was an iconic moment.
Yes.
Oh, Brothers K is your favorite. I know it's also Diaz, and I'm pretty sure it's Una's. I don't know if this one passed it up. He said it was really close.
Yeah.
So
I think he was waiting to tell us until we finished it.
Yeah. Una was supposed to be here, and he had something come up last minute, and he said he was going to try to hop on. But we're kind of coming to the close, so I don't know if he's going to make it or not.
Yeah.
I was
But
hoping he would.
I'm hoping he'll make a video, which I'm sure he will. But I'm interested to see.
I think he is.
Yeah.
I think he is, because he was talking about him and Crypto talking about some stuff. So I think Crypto's read it as well.
Right.
So if that's the case, we can look forward to some really excellent content.
And Stroganoff.
Yes.
That's where we got Stroganoff, in case you guys were wondering. You can credit that to Crypto. The rest of it was all us. Sleep deprived, making up food names for different characters.
At like 1 a.m. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. It's a group chat moment. It was great. Oh. Anyways.
But yeah, definitely. Just, I don't know. It's just one of those books where you just keep having to sit on it and process it.
Yeah. And there were just so many really interesting conversations happening throughout the book. It felt like I said, I felt like they weren't in quite as big of chunks as some of the books that I've read, but that didn't make them any less deep, despite the fact that they were smaller and kind of scattered more throughout. That it was interesting. And I think, was it the last live, or maybe one of the other ones, maybe one of the reading sprints, where we were trying to figure out like, why is the book called Demons?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the censored chapter gives a little bit of insight into that, because it could be referring to Stavrogin's demons, because he calls the hallucination of the little girl like a demon. But then
they all had their own demons that they were dealing with.
Right.
To me, it was like, this saying that you're struggling with your demons.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're fighting your inner demons.
Yeah. And the alternate titles, devils, the possessed, totally makes sense.
Yeah. And then we get to the end of like with Stepan and him quoting the Bible passage from Luke with the demons. And that was at the beginning of my book, that Bible passage.
Yes.
The very first thing before it even started. And so once that loops around at the second to last chapter, I was like, oh, okay. So I thought that was really interesting and kind of gratifying too, to kind of like, I was like, I forgot that was at the beginning of the book. It felt like very full circle. So
I love it when the title of the book is incorporated in the actual content. Then you're like, there's a title. It's right there.
That's one of my favorite things. Krista from Books and Jams calls it title spotting. Yeah. And so anytime I can find it, I'm like, oh, title spotting. I always have the desire to post it on social media and tag her. Always.
I like
It's always
that.
fun.
It's a fun
Yeah.
feeling.
It is. I think someone told me at one point that there's an actual real word for it, but I don't remember what it is. It's not title spotting. There's a real word. I'm like,
But
oh,
title spotting
well.
is fun to say.
And everyone knows what you mean when you say title spotting, as opposed to saying an obscure word. People will be like, what's that? And you'll be like, oh, it's title spotting. So
Yeah,
might as well just say title spotting, I guess.
exactly.
So. Well, I don't think that Una's going to make it on. It's been
Yeah.
almost an hour, unfortunately. So hopefully keep an eye on Codex Cantina's channel, because I'm sure that they will have some content coming out hopefully soon. I really hope. Oh, I like that. The last line of a book or a movie ends with the title. If I ever write a book, I'll make sure. Why am I holding this marker and pointing it? I'm good. It's fine.
Well, we're missing teacher.
So like a teacher. Yeah. If
You have
only
to
it was
have-
red, it'd be a little bit better for redlining and mark it, the marks, red
I
marks all over
couldn't
the
grade
page.
in red. It's so aggressive. I always graded in purple or green.
Yeah, that's a friendlier color. Blue is a calming color, although that might be the color they chose to write it in. So
Yeah,
so
that's true.
side tangent. All right. Well, did anyone have any other thoughts or anything that you wanted to discuss? No. Okay.
No.
Well, thank you all for joining us, both on this live show and in the Discord, and just in general, reading it with us. It's been fun to chat about the ending. I've been looking forward to this ever since I finished it, because it's one of those endings that you're like, you have to talk to someone about.
And
this.
it was one of the first times I actually finished a book for a read along ahead of the read. Like
a full
You have to
week or
binge
over
it.
a week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time ever.
And you needed it because you need that processing.
I did. I'm really glad I did not wait, because yeah.
It's a good one. All right, guys. Well, I hope that all of you have a lovely day. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you later. Bye.